Hey guys, Mr. V over here, doing a book review today for Words of Radiance by Sanderson. Now, this is book 2 in the Stormlight archive. So I want you to know that I try to do a spoiler-free book review. So this book review will be for people who read book 1, The Way of Kings, and you're not sure if you want to move on to book 2, because you can see book 2 is pretty thick. So let's get into the book review for Words of Radiance. So I want to start by saying that I really enjoyed Way of Kings. I get a very high rating. If you guys watch my book review on that, you'll see that I really enjoyed Way of Kings and I gave it a very high rating. Now, after reading The Way of Kings, I read a few other books, and then I came back to the Stormlight archive and I read book 2. But because of that, I didn't remember everything from The Way of Kings. But Sanderson does a great job of bringing you right back into the world and explaining things very quickly. So you're back in their world very quickly. With that being said, though, the book does start out a bit slow. It's not boring because you want to keep reading it, but it is a bit slow to start. But there is something about his writing style that is just so great that you want to keep reading. Even when nothing big is happening, you just want to keep reading. You want to find out what's going to happen. And he just draws you into the world so well. And as I said, it is a bit slow, but events are still happening. There are still events happening. It's just not as intense as book 1. So you need more patience if you want to read this book, because you can see this book is large. It's 1,100 pages, or the audio is 48 hours. So even when you're on page 200, that's only 15 or 20% into the book, which means you need more commitment and patience. Because there were times at page 180, I'm like, is anything going to happen? What's going on? But then I realize that, oh, I'm only 15% into the book. But after he gets going, he really gets going. And then it becomes very intense. And the story really just draws you in even more. So that's why I say, you want to make sure you just stick to the book. Don't be turned off by the beginning. I can't say much without giving spoilers away because, as I said, I just can't say much. But I would say that the story really picks up. Now, there are a lot of unknowns when you're reading this book, because this is part 2 in a 5-part series. I mean, technically it's 10 parts, but I know after part 5, they have most of the stuff done. So that's why I'm saying it's a 5-part series. But there's a lot of unknowns because a lot of world building is still happening from book 1 to this book. There's a lot of world building still happening. And there's also magical elements that are not fully explained. And they get explained as the book progresses. So it can be kind of tough because sometimes it causes a little confusion, which is a little bit annoying because you're not sure if you missed something or if it will be explained later. But the majority of the time it gets explained later on. Within a few chapters it gets explained. But I would say that when you're in those situations, it's best to just keep reading, because that thing you're confused about will be explained. Don't look online, because then you'll probably get spoilers. So just keep reading and it will be explained. Now, in this book, you are basically following 2 characters. You're following Shallan and Kaladin. There are many subplots that link to those 2 characters. So you're still following a lot of other characters, but those are the 2 main characters. And I found both stories to be great. I liked Kaladin's a bit more because I found his to be more intense, as he dealing with the more intense characters, such as Dalinar or the soldiers, all that. So I found Kaladin's to be more intense. But you should know that I still enjoyed Shallan's storyline, because she still raises a lot of questions when you're reading her story. And her character really grew on me. I'm not saying that I like her as much as Kaladin, but her story really grew on me. Even though, I find her very shady. At times she's a bit annoying. I mean, you guys saw how she was in book 1 and how she stole that stuff. And so she can be a bit shady. But he does a great job of building her story to where then I really wanted to know what was going to happen to her. And you really started to sympathize with her, and you just wanted to see, okay, what was going to happen with her. So he just does a great job, and I just enjoyed reading all the storylines that linked to both characters. I just enjoyed all the stories, and I think it's because his writing style is just so great. And his writing style is the same as book 1. It's very easy to read, very easy to understand, just brings you and draws you into the world very easily. But, just when you're going to understand that it just takes time to develop the story situations. So you want to just have patience. But if you have that patience, you definitely will see what he is trying to do, what Sanderson is doing, and the world building he is doing, and how great that is. So there are a few things, though, I did not like about the book. The first thing, though, is a minor spoiler. It happens in the first few chapters, but it's Shallan's Spren pattern. Now, I don't remember Pattern from The Way of Kings. I don't remember him at all, but I guess he was in that book. But he is this kind of Spren, and he has a shape that can semi-speak. But he becomes pretty big in the book, and especially in Shallan's storyline, he becomes pretty big. And I did not like the character. I just don't like Pattern. He just felt like an odd character, and I could not get into the character. It did not have to do with him being a Sprin, because I loved Syl. You know, I love Syl, but Pattern, I just did not like the character, and I could not get into his character. Another thing I did not like about the book was the battle scenes. I felt the same thing for The Way of Kings. I did not like the battle scenes in Way of Kings. I just feel there are too much going on for the battle scenes here. I just felt there's too much going on to where sometimes I'm even confused during the battles. But, you know, I enjoy the story elements more than the battle scenes. But there are people online that I've read who enjoy the battle more, and there were battles throughout it. So if you enjoy the battle things, I think you'll still like it. But again, I just enjoy the story elements more than the battle scenes. So that was one thing I didn't like as much. And the last thing I didn't like about it was I'm not a fan of the interludes. I feel they were misplaced. It felt odd learning about like these new characters out of nowhere, and then, you know, that you take a break from the story, you have the interludes, you learn about these characters, then you don't read about that character for like 200 or 300 more pages. I just felt the interludes were just odd, and even after finishing the book, I went back and I just felt the interludes were odd, and I think that Sanderson is a creative enough writer that he could have found a different way to introduce those things he talks about in the interlude. So that's why that was one other thing I didn't like about the book. But overall, I would still say, you know, this was just such a fun read, and I really enjoyed this book. And if you enjoyed book 1, then I definitely recommend book 2, because if you enjoyed Way of Kings, you will like Words of Radiance. You just need the patience. But let me give it my official rating now. So I always rate my books on a scale of 0 to 10, with a 0 being awful, a 5 is average, and a 10 is phenomenal. Guess anywhere near a 10, put it on your readings, because I'm a very tough critic, and a 5 is average. So for the Words of Radiance, I'm giving this a 7.5. I gave Way of Kings an 8.5, but 8.5 is very high, but 7.5 is still very high. It just was not as good as Way of King, but I still thought it was a great read, a lot of fun. As I said, I definitely recommend it if you enjoy the series. But if you guys have any comments, have any questions, post it in the comment section below, because I always love hearing your comments, you know, your suggestions. If you guys enjoyed the book review today, hit the subscribe button. I always upload multiple different book reviews. But thank you for watching my book review today. This is Mr. V. Go enjoy reading.